Good morning, fellow ruminators. Welcome back to another session, Rumination with Andrew. Thank you for joining as we're about to discuss a very important topical matter. And this morning, I would like to really speak briefly about Mr. Seaga's departure from the parliament, from Jamaica's parliament in 2005, and some of the points that he highlights in terms of where Jamaica is at that juncture of the history. Now, for those of you who do not know the most honorable, and dare I say that in Jamaica, people call their prime ministers and, you know, members of parliament as most honorable and honorable. And I have been saying that that was a dangerous precedence that we set when we started to call our leaders honorable and most honorable, because they just need the title. They're either prime ministers or they're members of parliament. We do not need to call them most honorable and honorable. Nothing is honorable or most honorable about them, because we are setting up a precedent, which we have already done, for them to be kings and queens and to rule as sovereign over us, when we, the people, should be the sovereign, right? But I think that now people just love, I know Martin Henry, former journalist of Jamaica, he had written an article in previous times about the fact that people worldwide love to be ruled over, and they love the monarchical rule and to have a king and a queen. And that's why we have in America, for example, the celebrities are really kings and queens, right? And you hear a lot about the P. Diddy's and the J-Lo and all these people that people worship and adore. And when they hear that they have fallen, they're wondering, how could these people have fallen? Because these are people that we adore. And we know what the Bible talks about, states when it talks about idolatry and not having any other gods before him. And many of us have set up men as their idols. We're no different from the Israelites who, and the Jews, who instead of worshiping God, were worshiping different pagan gods. Now, the most honorable Edward Philip George Seaga, ON, PC, LLD, former Prime Minister of Jamaica from 1980 to 1989, leader of the opposition from 1989 to 2006, was born on May 28, 1930, to the late Philip George Seaga and Ernest Seaga, nee Maxwell. He was educated at Wilmer's Boys School in Jamaica and graduated from Harvard University in 1952 with a bachelor's degree in the social sciences. I remember that way people have always, it was a great controversy surrounding Mr. Seaga's degree in terms of, did he finish his degree or did he not complete his degree at Harvard University? But we are learning that he did complete his degree at Harvard University in the social sciences. I think it was in sociology and in some aspects economics. I'm not sure if he did a joint. Was it anthropology? Well, maybe it was sociology and anthropology. I know that he had a lot of interest in anthropology also. But let's get into what Mr. Seaga has to say. Now, I tried to locate the entire speech online. It doesn't seem like the entire speech is available. So what I did, so I might refer to some of the excerpts I saw from the speech online. The entire speech is not here. I do not have access to the entire speech. However, I will look at some aspects, but let's look at what he had to say. Their JIS, that's the Jamaica Information Service, did create a brief video on some of the important aspects of what he said before he demitted office, before he departed from Jamaica's parliament. We shall be looking at that right now. One of the things that I find absolutely amazing about Jamaica is that we do not sometimes, we do not archive our history in the best way possible, because this should be made available online for people to access and to be able to read and to be able to interact with, because we need to know what our leaders in the past said. And Mr. Seaga spent many years in Jamaica's parliament. He was there for a long time. So he would have departed with a lot of experience and perhaps recommendations for how we can improve on our socioeconomic conditions. So let's now listen to the most honorable former Prime Minister of Jamaica, Edward Seaga. Shall we now? Let me share my screen. I have to share my screen before this starts. I forgot that I have to share my screen with you that you can see what I am talking about. All right, good. So it's there. Good.
Mr. Speaker, this is indeed a very special day. My record of participation in Parliament was 2.5 years spent in the Legislative Council, followed by 42.75 years in the House of Representatives, totaling a little more than 45 years. And as I pondered, how should I end my career in Parliament? What should I say in departing from this focus spot? It came to me that I should end it where I started. In those very early days, what I was finding, comparing my background, the background of the communities in which I lived and the people who I was getting to know, and came to the conclusion that we lived in two Jamaicas, in which one part has the blessings of being organized into a modern society. They might be called the HAVES, if I'm to make the comparison. And the other part, the much larger section of our Jamaica, is comprised of an Afrocentric traditional society, our folk society, our
So one of the things that Mr. Seaga is highlighting here in the video is the fact that we live in two Jamaicas, right? And we live in the Jamaica of the haves and the Jamaica of the have-nots. It means, therefore, that those two Jamaicas often conflict. And we hear the same thing about Haiti, right? That there are two Haitis also. We have the Haiti of the haves and the Haiti of the have-nots. That is something very important that we understand. We like to see ourselves as very different from Haiti, but we are not much different from Haiti, from the realities, the socioeconomic realities or abnormalities that occur in Haiti. It's time for us now to face up to these facts and understand that if we are going to move ahead and not have the level of violence that we have in Jamaica, that we have to get rid of this stark difference between the haves and the have-nots. Because one of the things we need to understand that we are on a very small space. We share a very small space. So the haves are able to see the have-nots, and the have-nots are able to see the lifestyles of the haves, right? It's not something very difficult to do. Let us look at Kingston, a very small space. So people look up in the hills and they see those massive mansions in Jamaica, right? And they understand the type of people who live there and that they live a higher lifestyle than these people who live below the hill. So these are things that we have to come to grips with. And I like to hear sometimes some of the people from the middle class and the upper echelons of society who like to talk about engaging their friends and entertaining their friends at home, and they're bringing them from overseas and pretending as if the Jamaica that they are bringing them to bespeaks the entire Jamaica, bespeaks the reality of the entire Jamaica. But what Mr. Seaga is saying, and he is correct, he has made an accurate comment, is that the Jamaica of the have-nots represents the majority, right? The Jamaica of the have-nots right? It represents the majority, right? So that is something that we need to understand and we need to grapple with, because a lot of times we do not want to grapple with. with that sort of reality. We like to talk about democracy, and that democracy is the decision or the agreement of the majority. Talk about the majority rules, right? And all of that. But what about the majority should also have access to a certain level of amenity and a certain standard of living? It's not just about voting, as Mr. Patterson was suggesting. It's about also access, equal access to the wealth, right, that we have in Jamaica. You can't have this sort of stark divide, this palpable divide that we have there. And then we hear people talking about the minority, right? Because oftentimes we also talk about, oh, race and ethnic groups, and the Carolyn Coopers and these people at the University of the West Indies like to talk about the fact that we are not, the majority Black population. But what they have left out, they do not talk about the fact that the majority Black people are actually not represented in Jamaica's mainstream culture, right? And the fact that we need to have more equal distribution of wealth, because they're enjoying some of the wealth and they don't care. The ones who have gotten some amount of success do not care. And the same thing like the Haitians, as not professor, but Sir Saunders was talking about the Haitian elites in Washington, D.C., and how they have this palace in Washington, D.C., and they like to, don their Gucci watches and behave as if they're important people, right? And like to behave as if they represent the French monarchy or some monarchy in Europe. And Jamaicans behave the same way, if we are to speak the truth. We are not much further than that reality that exists in Haiti. We might not have a palace in Washington, D.C. in terms of our embassy, but the wealth and the different houses that they have in different parts of the United States and all over Europe, Jamaicans do that, yes. And a lot of times, some of that wealth has been wealth that has been stolen from the masses of this Afro people that Mr. Seaga is speaking about, right? And give the man his credit, Mr. Seaga. He did his research, and he was, as I'm saying, an anthropologist, and he did a lot of research on Jamaica's folk culture, right? So he understands what he means when he speaks about the large majority of the populace being left behind. And one of the things that we like to do, as the slave masters did, is just to use the folk culture as a form of entertainment, as one love and one heart. Let's get together and feel all right. So we like the music, and the Jamaican people sit there and they have fun, and they listen to the reggae music and the dancehall music, and behave like they're slave masters when they themselves are slaves. Because when the majority is exploited, when foreigners get to the island, that is what they're seeing. They're seeing that the majority is poverty-stricken, right? And that they have no access to any form of wealth. So we have to come to grips with these two Jamaicas. And I think that from 1969, Mr. Seaga wrote a paper on the haves and the have-nots. And when he was leaving office, when he was leaving the parliament, Jamaica's parliament in 2005, nothing much had changed. And fast forward to 2024, nothing much has changed, because Jamaicans love to remain in the dark ages. We love that. Our minds are dark, and the way in which we operate and run the country is not enlightened by any stretch of the imagination. Time for us to grapple with these realities, okay? Let's continue to listen to the former Prime Minister of Jamaica, Edward Seaga. Oh, I think I have, okay, yeah. So let us continue.
Rural society or inner city people, where the modernization that has taken place elsewhere has not been imparted or adopted there.
Yes.
To make this comparison, therefore, let us look at the three main areas which a system of good governance ought to provide for the people of a country. In order to deal with the problems that exist in this area, two things must be done. A will must exist to provide for the substantial resources that are necessary to fight. But if it is the resources alone, it is a waste of funds because you cannot use resources to do the job that only good human resources can do. And it is time now for us to look at the situation from a perspective of getting rid of the dead wood and bringing in the green wood in the security forces. In leaving this house, I plead that a new look will be taken to ensure that the approach to education in this next round will take into consideration the need for a new look at the early childhood education system and to do what is necessary to strengthen it and to strengthen it effectively. What it means is that we would be doubling the skilled manpower of the country. We'll be doubling the capacity of young people to create a lifestyle which would make them upward mobile into a new segment of the class structure. And we'll be creating a more dynamic and productive economy.
So it's very interesting, that he talked about well, he did not elaborate on the secure criminal justice system, because that is a problem where crime and violence has taken over. And I think that he did mention, let me see if I can find it on my screen. He did mention in the speech, I have a written version of the speech here when he talks about the fact that the justice system is plagued by criminal elements. Yes, so he says here, let me see if I can share my screen with you. So these are just experts. It's just an excerpt rather, not expert, but excerpt from the speech that he had written whilst he was debating office. Now, he says, advice on the criminal justice system. First, in such a system, there must be a provision of secure criminal justice system. Now, yes, an effective education system, and there must be the creation of an economy which provides sufficient gainful opportunities. So if you do not have an economy that provides sufficient gainful opportunities, you are going to have that criminal element. You're going to breed that criminal element in society. I mean, this is self-evident truth. This is not something that you need to do any research on. And what is happening at the University of the West Indies? And why are they not calling out these facts? And just living in their world of illusion, right? Because that is what happens at the University of the West Indies. When you go there, you see that they're living in an alienated structure where they have ascribed importance to themselves when they're not necessarily doing a great job, the job that they were tasked to do. Now, we need to look at what was the condition 40 years ago and what it is today in relation to those three areas of governance. All right. Now, look at what Mr. Seaga is saying. There is no comparison between the situation 40 years ago and what exists today in the criminal justice system. He says, no comparison. Let's see what he has to say, why he's saying that there is no comparison. There were no widespread complaints about abuses of rights, and there were no extensive criminal activities that led to so many serious crimes, including murder. So he's saying that in the former justice system in Jamaica, when we became independent, we didn't have all of these realities. And I don't think our system is currently grappling with that transformation and that sort of change that we have had since over the years. At that time, he was referring to 40 years. That was 2005, so it would have been far more years right now. Something that we need to think about. Over the years, that system has deteriorated. So what Sir Saunders was talking about, we have an independent justice system, was nonsense. Utter nonsense. And we know that. We're aware of that. That's what he's hearing. And he's a diplomat, so he has to speak diplomatically, right? He's obliged to doing that. Over the years, that system has deteriorated to world record levels of crime and alarming levels of abuses of rights. Who suffers when this happens? It is the poor. It is the have-nots. It is the one Jamaica we find comprised of the traditional society. So that is the real Jamaica. The impoverished Jamaica is the real Jamaica. The illiterate, semi-literate people of Jamaica is the authentic Jamaica. And it's time for us to wake up and understand that, and don't behave as if when we go on the world stage, as if we have left behind some very important people there. And we have this very respectable Jamaican culture in the world. Nobody is going to respect you if you have a predominantly impoverished society, right? We can see that Toussaint Louverture was the most important man of the 19th century. Black, white, whatever you want to call it, the most important man of the 19th century, right? Yet, look at the state of Haiti, the crisis that it's going through. And nobody respects Haiti because of the poverty that is there, right? The poverty fact is there. We've got to develop our people, the human resources, as Mr. Seaga was suggesting. And all of this wonderful plans of building roads and highways and having all these smart cities will result in absolutely nothing if we do not develop the capacities of our human resources, right? We've got to do that. We've got to do that. We've got to make our population literate. We've got to make our population cultured. We can't just, impose upon them this rude boy culture and think that Bob Marley and the Usain Bolts are going to, are band-aids on a wound, on a big wound that we have that we need to take care of. And at this moment, sometimes I really wonder if that big wound can be healed, something that you have to think about for yourselves. Now, let's go now and return to Mr. Seaga's speech. Let me get back here.
Economy has had a period of rapid advance. It has had a period of rapid decline. It has had some recovery, and it has had some stagnation. When one looks at the averages that are the telltale signs of what has taken place in the economy, we are only a little better off. But there is a large segment that have not done well at all, and that's the farming community. And any study of poverty in this country will tell you that the greatest element of poverty is in the agricultural sector of the country. And until something happens there to improve the lot of the farmer, you're not going to be able to get past the problems that the farmer has in order to make a decent living for himself and his family. And so I leave the thought with you that there's a necessity to be able to look at these as priorities if we are to bring more people into an area of prosperity in the economy. You get involved in politics, it absorbs, sucks you in. You can't move away, you can't give it up. Too many people depend on you. But I am doing it's demonstrating that a good leader always does whatever he asks his followers to do. And so I now that light my candle, sing my song, I go to my field.
One of the things that we see back on that, one of the things that's amazing about Jamaican politicians is the fact that, having spearheaded and having been the head of a disastrous, what should I say now, terms, right, in office, where they were also instrumental in getting us to where we are now. They can leave Parliament, comfortably and go home to retire. But the fact of the matter, the people are left behind. A large majority of Jamaicans are left behind, right? And that is very sad. Because Mr. Seaga also was head of the IMF program that, the IMF implemented in Jamaica during the 1980s. And I know that he pushed back in some cases, but some of those draconic measures by the IMF and the World Bank have resulted in the level of poverty that we see on the island. Not to mention what happened in the 1990s with the age or the era of globalization and what the IMF policies, the havoc that it has wreaked on the Jamaican economy. And for those of you who are not aware of those policies, you can watch the documentary film by Stephanie Black called Life and Debt, right? Very important film that was showcased in Jamaica and the entrenched poverty that is there because of these economic policies that the IMF imposed upon that nation. And our politicians, it seems like they were very honored to have implemented those policies. And they took people off their farms, and farmers who were able to send their children to school and were doing fairly well in the 1990s. As a result of those policies, they had to shut down lots of their small businesses to accommodate this, the policies of globalization, which allowed lots of imports into Jamaica and into our economy. Imports of which now we're suffering because when you look at the people, the health of our people are not looking good in terms of lots of obesity in Jamaica because they're eating all of this food coming from North America filled with all the chemicals and looking just like Americans are looking, fat and unsightly, right? We need to look at our economy and we need to look at our people and we need to invest in our people, right? We need to invest in our people. And Jamaicans don't like, the elites do not like to invest in Jamaicans because, as I said before, they do not respect them, right? The Jamaican elites do not find our people to be people with whom they want to live. And I really wonder sometimes when I see the level of violence there, if that it has over the year has not been an agenda of ethnic cleansing, right? I do wonder because what the crime and violence in Jamaica is not normal for a small space, for a small society. Like fact of Jamaica having on average over 1,000 murders per year. And let's not talk about the unreported murders because those are the murders reported, right? Femicide, homicide, all the sides. We are at the helm of everything. We are ranked way up there. Number 1, number 5, number 6, I don't know, right? Because we love to be in the news and all the negativity that surrounds the island. We love it. We enjoy seeing ourselves in that light and say, yes, Jamaican culture, we're popular, right? Jamaica to the world. right? But what aspect of Jamaica to the world are we promoting? That is the question. And many of us do not want to face these realities, the lies that we tell ourselves about Jamaica, the lies that we tell ourselves about the island of Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And that is why Marcus Mosiah Garvey could not have lived in Jamaica, because he understood that Jamaicans were not serious and have not yet been serious about growth and development of our economy and of our people. He understood that. Right? So when we talk about Black and white people, the fact is, Marcus Mosiah Garvey, a Black man, had to go to England to die. He could not have lived in Jamaica. He just could not stand that place. It was too backward, socially, politically, and economically backward, and not much has changed. Not much has changed over the years. And this is what Mr. Seaga is saying, or was saying in his speech. That we had a period of rapid growth, of rapid advancement, then it declined, then it went to a little improvement, but still stagnant. Not much has improved. Right? Because we love to be in the dark ages. Right? We love to be in the dark ages. And when we talk about the Creole and the fact that we need to speak English and so that our people can be literate and can move themselves out of that sort of situation of this folk culture. Very important, our folk culture is still important. We need to preserve our folk culture, but we can't keep our people in that folk culture and not take them out into the world, into the enlightened world. And the Creole is not an enlightened word. It's not going to enlighten their minds. It is not, because we have not produced anything of any great enlightenment in the Creole. Right? What have we produced in the Creole? Right? That is going to enlighten the minds of Jamaicans. We've got to grow up. We've got to wake up and smell the coffee. We're sleeping, and we need to start recognizing that we as a people have been left behind. And the minority, those of us who have made some success here and there, the majority of people that are living on the island, you represent them, because when people go there, they're going to see that they are Jamaicans like you, right? And the majority of which have or whom have been left behind. The majority of these people have been left behind. And it's time for us now, as those who have accomplished a little here and there. Because remember now that if we think that we are ahead, and particularly if you live on the soil in Jamaica, we know that you're not safe, because people are seeing the injustices, and that is why we're seeing even now business people being attacked, right, left, and center, because people are angry. They see that some people are moving ahead, and they're wondering, why? Why have I not moved ahead? And why should I allow all of these people to move ahead and I'm not moving ahead? It's the same thing during slavery. It's no difference, guys. Slavery was an economic model, and globalization is synonymous with slavery. It's an economic model. Some countries, a few should do well, and the majority should not. Right? And right now, Jamaica is at the bottom of the economic ladder. And no matter what Andrew Holness is saying there, or Nigel Clark, because they don't even know their head from their tail, I can tell you that. Neither Nigel Clark nor Andrew Holness knows their head from their tail, because based on what they're doing down there, they're just following the global elites. They are just reading the plot out of that playbook, and they're just running with the show. But that is not going to improve the lives of the majority of Jamaicans. In fact, our country has been sold out to foreign interests and to foreign investors who whom, for the most part, do not respect our people. So how do you think your economy is going to grow? And it might grow, but it's not going to grow for the common people. In the States, in the United States of America, the Southern economy, the South, was very rich during slavery, extremely wealthy planters, but the majority of their people were impoverished. And that is why the system had to go. Haiti was the richest colony in the New World, right? It was France's greatest, its crown jewel, right? That provided it with all of the wealth that it needed to have grown its economy and to have, arrived and to have surfaced as a great empire of the world. That little space, that little land that you called Haiti did that. But guess what? The majority of the people, the slaves, were exploited, and that system had to go. And many of these people were beheaded and they were slaughtered. Many of these so-called wealthy people who never even imagined that these slaves, right, could have instigated, could have fomented a revolution that got rid of them. Many of them had to flee. I hope that that will never happen to Jamaica, but if we continue like this, it is going to happen. The writing is on the wall, and it's time for us now to understand the realities of Jamaica, that they are damning, they're not good, and we must rise up to build a country. And you're not educated if you are not understanding the realities that afflict so-called modern Jamaica. The truth is the truth, whether you want to accept it, or not. It is the truth. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you in another video. Hope that you have enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. All the best. Thank you. Bye.